There have been forbidden glimpses into the unknown. Deep ocean trenches glowing with alien light. Sea monsters no human should ever see, and even cosmic glitches that break reality. These are the things humans were never meant to see, and what follows uncovers what nature tried to hide forever. 100. The Tide Fire Colony.
Whoa.
This is a tide fire or colony of lichen worms, a cool sea creature that looks like something burning underwater. But it is not, and their orange shell does two jobs. It stops them drying out at low tide and hides them. 99. The blast that moves a hillside. A mining blast. Crews pack explosives into a hillside and drop the whole face at once to reach the minerals buried underneath. What wind and water would take 1,000 years to strip, people remove in 4 seconds. 98. The golf course that erupted. At a golf course in Ontario, the ground tore open on its own. Gas and water blasted out of the fairway. The whole place stank of propane, and the town declared a state of emergency. Still, nature does stranger things to living bodies. 97. The spider that climbs out of itself. A tarantula cannot grow inside the shell it has, so it leaves it behind. It flips onto its back, which looks exactly like dying, and works out of its own skin. For days after it lies soft and defenseless, unable to eat. And that is small compared to what comes next. 96. Kilauea in full flow. Kilauea, on Hawaii's Big Island, is erupting inside the Halemaumau crater. Lava fountains fire from 2 vents are more than 1,300 feet tall. Rock chunks 5 inches across have landed in gardens miles away. But after that noise, something becomes completely silent. 95. The garden built by hand. A Japanese garden where nothing landed by accident. The grass, the shaped trees, every stone, arranged over years to look like nature, did it alone. But the next thing answers to nobody. 94. The horse on the open beach. A horse runs loose along an empty beach, usually a fast breed like an Arabian. No rider, no fence, no reason beyond running. This is what a horse does when nobody wants anything from it. 93. Water like glass. These turquoise waves are clear enough to see through before they fall. That color is not a filter. It is what sunlight does in shallow water with nothing floating in it. 92. Snow over Austria. Heavy snow falls across a mountain region, probably Austria. A quiet road, a dark fence, flakes thick enough to bury the peaks behind. Nothing dangerous happens at all, and that is the point. And yet, out on the water, something is moving. 91. The swans on the ice. A family of mute swans glides across a half-frozen lake, cygnets behind. They look calm, and people assume calm means harmless. A swan will go after almost anything that comes near the young, but not everything out there is only defending itself. 90. The car covered in lights. Somebody buried a Mazda MX-5 under Christmas lights and drove it anyway. The joke is that this is one of the most raced cars in the world, built for a track. 89. Animals wet. A ranking of how animals look soaked, which proves how much work fur does. Flatten it, and half are unrecognizable. And feathers have a problem of their own. 88. The chicken with curled feathers. A frizzle, Polish chicken. One gene curls each feather outward instead of flat, so the bird looks caught in a wind that is not blowing. But its cousin went in a completely different direction. 87. The king of all poultry. The Brahma rooster has been called the king of all poultry since the 1800s. Hens weigh 8 to 10 pounds, and roosters go far past that. This one went viral because beside a person, it does not look like a chicken. 86. The pumpkin that broke the scale. Giant pumpkins are a squash called Cucurbita maxima, grown for one reason, to beat somebody else's. Record holders pass 2,800 pounds, heavier than a small car. Nobody eats them, but some things have grown to vanish instead. 85. The tent that is not there.
It can be used when other conventional methods are not reasonable for the hunting circumstances. The ghost blind is a new revolution in the way you hunt.
A hunting blind, nicknamed the invisibility blind. The fabric and shape are built to make whoever is inside vanish into the background. The person is standing right there. 84. The roller coaster bridge. Japan's Eshima Ohashi is built steep so ships pass underneath. Photographed head-on with a long lens, it stops looking like a road and starts looking like a wall you drive up. 83. The snail eating upside down. A snail works through a carrot while hanging upside down. They look like the simplest animals alive, but the mouth carries thousands of tiny teeth on a moving band, which strips almost any plant. 82. The bird that hunts by smell. The kiwi is New Zealand's national bird, so much so the people call themselves Kiwis. Almost every bird hunts by sight. The kiwi hunts by smell. Nostrils at the tip of its beak, tracking worms underground. 81. King Alfred's cake. This fungus is called King Alfred's cake, and the name fits. It grows in hard, dark lumps that look burnt, living on dead hardwood, feeding on the tree after it has already lost. 80. The fungus that rots the tree. Hoof fungus grows out of living trunks in the shape of a horse's hoof. It eats broadleaf trees hollow from the inside while they still stand in leaf. By the time you see it, the damage is done. 79. What comes out of the pipes? Workers pull huge plugs of packed dirt from pipes under homes and factories. Years of grit compress into a solid shape holding the exact form of the pipe. 78. The blisters in the lawn.
It's water that's coming down.
These are lawn blisters. After heavy rain, water is trapped between grass roots and hard soil with nowhere to drain. The ground lifts into a bubble you can push with a foot and watch move. 77. The oldest trick light plays. A rainbow happens when sunlight enters a raindrop, bends, bounces off the back, and comes out split into colors. Everyone has seen one from the ground, where the horizon cuts it in half. 76. The moose in the shallows. A moose runs through shallow water, far better in it than those legs suggest. They swim hard, reach 6 miles an hour, and dive 18 feet for plants on the bottom. But something much smaller swims better. 75. The shellfish that swims. Most people assume a scallop sits on the seabed doing nothing. It swims, clapping its two shells together to jet through open water and escape a starfish. But another animal breaks a much bigger rule. 74. The mammal that lays eggs. A short-beaked echidna. Mammals give birth, that is close to the definition, and the echidna is one of only 5 species on Earth that lay eggs instead. 73. The tongue that reaches. The tallest animal on land filmed too close. A giraffe's tongue is a grabbing tool, 20 inches long and tough enough to pull leaves from between thorns that would shred a human hand. 72. The tongue that talks. Most birds have a tongue built for one job, eating. A parrot's is thick, strong, and bendy, used to handle food and to shape sound. That second job is why it can throw your voice back at you. 71. The Dracula parrot. Pesquet's parrot is better known as the Dracula parrot, and it earns it. Black and crimson feathers, and a bare vulture's face. The bald head is practical, because it feeds on soft fruit that would ruin feathers. 70. The electric blue eel. A blue ribbon eel moves over a reef, long, thin, and painfully bright. It is born black, turns blue as a male, then yellow later. The color hides it from nothing we would recognize. 69. The crabs that decorate the beach. Sand bubbler crabs filter sand for scraps, and what they discard is the strange part. Each mouthful comes out as a neat pellet, left in spirals around their burrows. 68. The army that only exists at low tide. When the tide pulls back, thousands pour out of the beach at once and feed. That window is all they get. The tide returns, wipes out every pellet, and drives them underground. But some things down there never leave. 67. The clam that outlives everyone. That pale thing the clam pushes out is its foot, not a tongue, used to anchor and drag itself along. This kind lives incredibly long. One was aged at over 200 years. And age is not the strangest thing down there. 66. The animal science cannot hold. Jellyfish live in every ocean and are among the hardest animals to study. The problem is not finding them. They are so delicate that catching one usually destroys the thing you wanted to see. 65. The fish with a human face. A koi surfaces with markings that read, clearly, as a human face. Nobody bred it, and nobody painted it. The colors simply landed that way, and our brains refuse to read it as anything else. 64. What was buried in the rock?
Cut this unikite kind of by this epidote line. I'm hoping that it runs throughout the rock, so let's take a look.
Someone split a rock open and found a crystal inside, probably amethyst. These grow in pockets of cooling volcanic rock, sealed in the dark for centuries, until somebody breaks the shell. And older things are buried deeper still. 63. The jaw from the deep past. This one is not a photograph. It is artwork built outward from something real, the fossil jaw of an ancient sea worm. No human ever saw it alive. Nothing survived but the teeth. 62. The shadow burned into the wall. A thermal shadow test. Fierce radiation scorches every surface it touches, but solid objects block it, so the wall behind stays clean. What is left is a shadow burned into the stone. 61. Ice you can read through. This Alaskan ice is clear enough to look straight down into, like glass with no bubbles. That screw is the anchor a climber's whole weight hangs from, driven into nothing but frozen water. 60. The flowers made of ice. Frost flowers grow upward out of newly frozen surfaces when the air is far colder than the water below. A breath of wind destroys them. They last minutes, and then they are gone. 59. Lightning trapped in wood. Touch electric probes to damp wood, and the current has to cross somehow. It takes the wettest path, burning branching black lines into the surface. What is left looks like frozen lightning, and the real thing is coming later. 58. The rainbow with no end. From the ground, a rainbow is an arc because the horizon cuts the bottom off. From a plane, there is no horizon in the way, and the same light comes out as a complete circle. 57. The cloud that looks like a craft. A lenticular cloud formed over Bursa in Turkey, and the reports came in as you would expect. Air rushing over the mountains sets up a wave, and cloud forms in the crest and holds position. And not every shape up there is a cloud. 56. The ring in the sky. A perfect circle of smoke hangs in the air on its own. It is a vortex ring, formed when smoke is punched fast through a round opening from a chimney or a transformer blowing. But on the ground, people make shapes on purpose. 55. The taxus that made a face. In Times Square, an art piece parked yellow cabs in a pattern that only works from above. At street level, it is traffic. From a rooftop, it is the ghost face mask, staring up out of New York. 54. Snow on the open ocean. Snow on open sea is rare, because the water is usually too warm to let it settle. There is nothing to catch it, and nothing to see it land on. It looks like the storms old sailors described, and nobody believed. And trees get bent by stranger forces than wind. 53. The crooked forest. In Poland, 400 pines all bend sharply at the base into the same J shape, then grow straight up. Whatever did it to every tree at the same age. Theories run from furniture makers to heavy snow, but elsewhere, the trees stopped moving entirely. 52. The swamp that froze. A Louisiana swamp after a rare hard freeze. Ice coats the trunks, and the Spanish moss froze solid mid-drip like curtains. The water underneath stayed black, and water misbehaves in warmer places too. 51. The rain that falls in one spot. It looks like a downpour landing on one square of ground, and nowhere else, which rain cannot do. It is a burst water main firing straight up, and the person filming has no idea. But then, the water starts glowing. 50. The sea that makes its own light. Bioluminescence means light made by a living thing. In the ocean, it comes from plankton too small to see, in numbers big enough to light a coastline. And if you get closer, it reacts to you. 49. The lagoon that lights up. A lagoon where the water burns blue after dark. It looks dead until something disturbs it. Push a boat through, and the wake lights up behind you, like somebody dropped the night sky in. 48. When your hands start glowing. Someone puts their fingers in, and the water lights up. The plankton flare brighter the harder they are disturbed. And the light is not welcome. It is bait, meant to draw something bigger onto whatever is attacking them. 47. The lights. The northern lights are particles thrown off the sun hitting the top of our atmosphere and turning the air into color. Green, red, or violet, depending which gas is struck and how high. 46. The glacier that bleeds. Blood falls pours out of Antarctica's Taylor Glacier, exactly the color the name suggests. Salty water full of iron sat sealed under that ice for millions of years. When it meets air, the iron rusts on contact and runs red. And now something alive begins moving as one. 45. The murmuration. Thousands of starlings fold and turn as one shape. A falcon cannot lock onto a single bird inside a form that never stops changing. Nobody leads it. Each bird watches the 7 nearest it. 44. The boat inside the flock. A huge flock swarms one small boat until you cannot see the water. It happens all the time at Dandong in China and Yamuna Ghat in Delhi, where people go out to be swallowed by it. 43. The fish gasping for air. A fish farm packed with carp. They crowd every gap of open surface and gulp at the air, which fish should never need to do. There is not enough oxygen beneath them. 42. The bait ball. This is the sardine run at Moalbol, moving like one animal. Millions spin into a tight turning column because a predator cannot pick one target out of a shape that keeps folding through itself. However, not everything runs. 41. The stampede. A dolphin stampede off the California coast, rare enough that most people who work that water never see one. A group like this runs from 5,000 animals to over 100,000. 40. The dolphins at the bridge. Dolphins leap near Florida's bridges often enough that locals barely look up. They ride boat wakes and work the structures, apparently because they want to. 39. The swarm that eats a country. Desert locusts, covering everything under an open sky. A swarm like this is a food emergency, not an inconvenience. 1 square kilometer eats as much in a day as 35,000 people. And the size only gets worse from here. 38. The strongest animal on land. An elephant pushes a full-grown tree over, and it is not fighting. African elephants use trunk and body weight to topple trees over 1,000 kilograms just to clear a path. But in the water, there is something far bigger. 37. The largest animal that has ever lived. The blue whale is bigger than anything that has ever existed, dinosaurs included. Nearly 100 feet, up to 200 tons, with a heart the size of a small car, and a call other whales hear across an ocean. 36. The glacier that will not shrink. Almost every glacier on Earth is retreating. Argentina's Perito Moreno is not. It grinds forward at the same rate it melts, holding its balance year after year, dropping huge slabs into the lake as it goes. But some ice is a road. 35. The road to K2. The Baltoro Glacier in Pakistan is not scenery, it is the route. Every trekker heading for K2 Base Camp walks its surface, under the second highest peak on Earth. And water is just as unforgiving. 34. The gorge nobody should paddle. A kayaker drops into the Class 5 rapids of Batoka Gorge. Class 5 is where a mistake stops being a swim and becomes a rescue, and there is nowhere on that stretch to pull over. 33. Starship. SpaceX. Starship is built to be fully reusable. Rockets have always been thrown away after one flight. Every test asks whether the biggest one ever built can fly twice, because coming home is the hard part. 32. The belly flop. This is how Starship comes back down. The rocket falls sideways on purpose, flat against the air, using its own body as a brake, then flips upright in the last seconds. 31. The wave. A ship makes. A ship launched sideways into the water, which is still how many yards do it. The hull shoves a huge amount of water aside at once, and the wave coming back is a hazard of its own. 30. The rock they blew apart. A planned explosion used to break solid rock into pieces small enough to move. It looks like a disaster, and it is routine. Everything is calculated except how it looks. However, some blasts need watching very closely. 29. The blast they measured first. The Kamarat 2 explosion cleared ground for a dam. Engineers watched for movement and tremors throughout, because the blast was never the risk. The risk was what the hillsides would do afterwards. And the ground has explosives of its own. 28. The volcano that erupts mud. A mud volcano throws up thick, cold mud instead of lava. Methane builds underground until the pressure has to go somewhere, escaping through the softest ground it can find. Azerbaijan holds nearly half of them all. But the real thing runs much hotter. 27. Atina in motion. Mount Etna in Sicily is the most active volcano in Europe, running lava down its own side. It is also a tourist site, so officials shut the summit during eruptions, and fire also falls from above. 26. The fireball over Cairns. A meteor lit the whole sky over Cairns Airport in Queensland. Barely a meter across, which is nothing, and it still exploded loudly enough that towns for miles heard the bang. Meanwhile, down at sea level, the ice was coming apart. 25. The ice cliff that collapses on cue. Perito Moreno's blue ice cliffs break into Lake Argentino so regularly that people plan trips around it. The glacier pushes forward, the wall loses its grip, and hundreds of tons drop. But elsewhere, it is not scheduled at all. 24. The wall that came down. Glaciers shed ice naturally, but warming has made it far more common. This is the front wall of one crumbling in Laguna San Rafael, once rare enough that nobody had a camera pointed at it. And sometimes the camera is already rolling. 23. The moment it broke. Part of Chile's O'Higgins Glacier collapses when the second people are filming it. They came to look at a wall of ice and caught the moment it stopped being one. 22. The whale on the rocks. A baby whale washed onto rocks near the shore, and normally that is the end of it, because you cannot lift a whale. This time rescuers worked it free and got it back to deep water alive. 21. The thing light cannot escape. A black hole, and the picture is a drawing rather than a photograph for one reason. Gravity there is so strong that nothing gets back out, including light. There is nothing to photograph. But closer to home, the sky turns violent. 20. The fastest thing you will ever see. Lightning is a burst of electricity jumping between cloud and ground, and people treat it far too casually. Anyone nearby is at risk, and anyone in the water is in serious trouble, because water carries the charge outward, and the storm brings worse than lightning. 19. The wall of dust. A haboob rolls across Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. A thunderstorm shoves air down and forward, pushing a solid wall of dust ahead of it that swallows a city in seconds. But the air can hit harder than that. 18. The microburst. Those tall columns of falling rain are rain shafts. When cold air drops behind them and hits the ground, it spreads outward at over 100 miles an hour. The damage looks like a tornado, because the speed is the same. 17. The hail that wrecked York County. A hailstorm hit York County in South Carolina, driving chunks of ice through houses, fences, and car roofs, part of a system that also brought flash flooding. Meanwhile, on the coast, the water arrived instead. 16. The wave that hit Catania. A storm wave slams the port of Catania in Sicily, thrown up by Cyclone Harry crossing the Mediterranean. Harbor walls exist to stop exactly this. That day, they did not. 15. The tornado in Pelotas. A short-lived tornado struck Pelotas in Brazil and went straight through the Fragata neighborhood, flattening the district in minutes. Somehow, nobody was killed or seriously hurt. 14. The mountain that turned to liquid. These start with heavy rain or spring snow melting too fast. The slope takes on more water than it can hold, and the mountainside becomes a river of rock and mud, faster than a person can run. 13. The ground that started moving. A meltwater flood pours into Yambulatovo in Russia. Warm weather melted the winter snow too fast, and because the village sits low, it all came downhill at once. On camera, the ground itself looks like it is sliding. 12. The hole that opened in Shanghai. A sinkhole opened without warning at a busy Shanghai intersection, caused by a groundwater leak from metro tunneling below. It took out a junction full of traffic, and by pure luck, nobody went in with it. 11. The sea that boiled. Off Taiwan, thousands of sardines threw themselves out of the water onto a fishing boat. The surface looked like it was boiling. They were not swimming toward the boat. They were running from whatever was under them. 10. The fish that came aboard. A billfish launches out of the water onto a boat deck, mid-fight, still on the line. That size, that speed, with a spear on the front, turns a crowded deck deadly in 1 second. But the next danger fits in one hand. 9. The phone that went off. A phone exploded while charging in a child's hands. Lithium batteries fail this way when they overheat, and once it starts, you can only drop it. 8. The family blown into the sea. At Skiathos, the runway ends at a beach, and a family behind a departing plane is picked up by the jet blast and thrown into the sea. There are signs warning about exactly this. Crowds still gather on purpose. 7. The launch that failed. A SpaceX rocket carrying supplies to the space station exploded shortly after launch. The cause was probably too much pressure building in the liquid oxygen tank. 6. The tornado made of fire. A fire whirl forms when extreme heat meets swirling wind and the flames climb into a spinning column. They appear inside large wildfires and make fighting one almost impossible. But some people fly straight toward the storm. 5. Flying into the eye. The U.S. Air Force Hurricane hunters fly straight into the eye of Hurricane Melissa because somebody has to measure it from inside. Once through, the cloud walls curve up and outward around them, which crews call the stadium effect. However, mountains do not let you fly out. 4. The avalanche at Annapurna. A massive avalanche struck Nepal's North Annapurna region, sending thousands of tons of snow and ice down toward a base camp full of people. That area is known for it, and this is what climbing there costs. And the sea does it to whole countries. 3. The quake and the wave. A massive earthquake struck Japan, an 8.8 that killed people and wrecked the area around the capital. The shaking was only the start. The footage nobody forgets is the water, crossing farmland at the speed of traffic. 2. The bomb they set off underwater. An underwater nuclear blast, almost certainly one of the Marshall Islands tests in 1958. Watch the column climb. That is the ocean thrown into the sky, and the ships anchored nearby were put there on purpose to see what it would do to them. And yet, one thing we made is worse. 1. The elephant's foot. This is the elephant's foot, left by Chernobyl in 1986. When found, it was among the deadliest objects on Earth, giving off enough radiation to kill a person in minutes. So here is what we will leave you with. Out of all 100, which one do you genuinely wish you had never seen? Tell us in the comments.